Welcome to Limited Time Only, a podcast of improving at Magic with a focus on limited play. Welcome to your new favorite limited podcast, LTO, Limited Time Only.
Hello everyone and welcome to Limited Time Only episode 97. This is going to be our Core 19 review. I'm joined here with my co-hosts, Danny Cathro. Danny, say hi.
How's it going, everybody?
And our newly minted Silver Pro, Nick Salas. Congratulations, Nick, on your 12-3 in Minneapolis.
Thank you. What up, party people? How you doing?
You're right. There's a reason to celebrate. Once again, we have wonderful sponsors. We are sponsored here by Oasis Games in Salt Lake City. You can find them at oasisgameslc.com. We're also brought to you by the Mana Base. The Mana Base is www.themanabase.com. And we're welcoming a third sponsor this week, Inked Gaming. Inked Gaming makes custom playmats. You can upload images. You can add text. They can do all kinds of cool stuff for you. And you'll want to use the code CCMTG10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. Once again, you can support us directly on Patreon, if that's your thing. Patreon.com/LTOMTG. This week we're going to do a really big section on what's gone up for us, what's gone down for us, why it's gone up, why it's gone down. We're going to talk about each of your 5 favorite colors. In addition, we're going to treat multicolored and artifacts as its own color. So we're going to go ahead and start with white. And Danny, tell us what cards have gone up in value for you. Go ahead and give us 2 white cards that have gone up in value for you, and then we'll see what Nick has to say.
One card that's gone up for me throughout the course of it is probably like Inspired Charge. I am normally pretty down on that type of card in general. Like, I don't draft Inspired Charge decks very much, but like, the red-white deck is a real legitimate strategy, and like Inspired Charge does a real thing in that deck. It's like surprisingly good. There's definitely decks that want 2 copies of Inspired Charge, and I didn't think that would be a place initially. So I think that's definitely one of the biggest jumpers for me. And then kind of going along with that is Rustwing Falcon. That card's like just surprisingly playable. There's certain decks where it's actually good, and you really want to curve. Like, you want that on turn 1 more than anything else. And it works really nicely with the Inspired Charge. I think like that whole aggressive white archetype came together, but with like certain cards overperforming.
Excellent. Nick, what card in white gets your most improved sticker?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Angel of the Dawn. Like,
okay.
In lieu of the aggressive white strategies, like, this card looks good, and it's probably a little bit even better than it looks. When you're going wide and you're playing your Sun Falcons or whatever that unplayable card's name is.
Rustwing Falcon.
Rustwing Falcon. This does like an Inspired Charge impression when you're already wanting to play 1 or 2 Inspired Charges, and it gives you a 3/3 to boot.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a lot to not like about this card.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's like one of the best 5 drops that you can play, basically.
Yeah, when it's approaching a white deck's turn 5, you really have to look out for this card. You have to like be prepared to take a bigger hit than you're expecting. And my second card is, I'm going to agree with Danny here. I'm going to say Inspired Charge is a lot better than I thought it probably would be in the format. I don't think I can say anything that he hasn't said about it yet.
That's awesome. So while I agree with most of the things that you guys said, the one card that's really kind of gone up for me the most in value has been Gallant Cavalry. At the beginning of the format, I looked at this as nearly unplayable because so many things were preying on, the bears in the format. There were so many like 1/3s and things like that I thought this card would not be very playable. But it's been incredibly good thanks to things like Inspired Charge, thanks to things like Trumpet Blast or Make a Stand. So it's kind of impressed me.
It's weird how good Gallant Cavalry is in the set and how bad Call the Cavalry was. Like, everyone was super high on Call the Cavalry in Dominaria and then realized it wasn't very good. And then people were lower on this one and then realized it was actually just very good.
It's just because, like, the power level between cards, I think, makes, the Call the Cavalry effect typically a little better when your cards are a little lower power. But we had just these huge synergies and bombs and Dominaria. And so the two 2/2s didn't really line up against like your Slimefoots so well.
Yeah, you could just be doing anything else, all of which was way, way better. And so, yeah.
Exactly. And there were so many 1/1 producers around that the 2/2s didn't, like, they either got chump blocked all day or like just got double blocked by 2 Saproings that you incidentally made somewhere.
Yeah, it just didn't, the 2/2s didn't wind up mattering, right? Like,
Yeah.
your opponent also just kind of played random things and went, like, you can take advantage of going wide, like you can in the set.
Exactly. I was about to say that. Like, the one thing, maybe the 2 cards that you had were Charge and Song of Freyalise. One of which being an uncommon, and the other one...
In a different color. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other one's...
And
like
then Charge wasn't that great. It was, like, okay, but...
It's fine, but it's not as good as its inspired version.
Yeah, because you don't need... Like, when you want that effect, it doesn't really matter how much mana it costs. Like...
Yeah.
Right? Like, Charge costing 1 mana doesn't really do much on the turn that you're trying to Alpha Strike them.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the cards that have impressed you. What are the cards that have let you down? What's the white card that's let you down the most, Nick?
The one that has let me down the most, I'm gonna go with your boy, the 2/1 Cavalry Drillmaster.
Yeah.
And that's just a factor of 2/1s not really mattering in this format all that much. It gets blocked by everything. It doesn't trade with too much. There's like so many 1/3s just floating around that it just doesn't do anything. The +2/+0 is actually pretty nice. It can get like a flyer in there for an extra 2 damage. But just like paying 2 mana for the whole +2/+0 and a chump blocker is
Just like a worse Sure Strike?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really underperformed. There's certain sets where I think that card would be like insane and really snowball boards, but in this one it's just like it doesn't really do much.
Yeah, the stats just don't do it any service at all.
All right. Danny, what's the card that's disappointed you the most in white?
I haven't like Take Vengeance. Most of my white decks have wanted to be really aggressive, and so Take Vengeance has felt so weird. And even in Sealed, sometimes it's just like it's awkward having your removal spell be so conditional. Like it makes you play really strange, and it's like it's easier for them to realize what's going on. And so I was pretty down on Take Vengeance initially, and then I'm still really down on it. Like I think that card's just not that great.
I kind of like Take Vengeance. You can pair it up with the Starcrown Stag and kind of have your whole combo there. But if you already have Starcrown Stag, I guess you're already winning.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in Sealed, it's a nice thing to have.
Yeah, I've seen like decks splash it in Sealed, and it just seems like, wow, you must be like pretty desperate if you're splashing it. Like I'd rather play a lot of other removal spells.
Yeah.
And then if you're playing like in draft or red white aggro deck, you just like can't really put it in your deck. It's like not allowed. But
there's also like a few things that kind of just get around it too. Like the Angel of the Dawn lets all of your creatures get around, take vengeance for a turn. Knightly Valor that came up at the GP. Somebody Knightly Valor their 4/4 that makes 2 1/1s when it attacks. And I had to take vengeance in my hand. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get this next turn, and it was untapped, and I was like, wait a minute, that thing's not supposed to be untapped.
I had this plan. What happened to my plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His plan was to talk about the blue cards that have made him happy. What's on that note? What blue card has really blown you away, Nick? What blue card has really impressed you? You know, maybe you didn't see it coming. Maybe it's something you were big on at the beginning.
Essence Scatter has been really nice. It's kind of like a blue Doomblade, so to speak, because there's not too many good 2-drops in the format. So you can play Essence Scatter on turn 2 if you need to, if you're on the draw, take care of their 3-drop. And it's like a cheap, efficient removal for something later on in the game. All you have to do is hold up 2 mana when you're anticipating like some huge 5-drop or something. And it's lined up pretty nicely in this format.
All right, Danny, what about you? What blue card has impressed you?
One that's gone up is probably just Cancel. Like, that card's surprisingly playable. We've kind of talked about how most of the decks in this format are pretty slow. And no one's really like almost everything's at sorcery speed. At least like most of your opponents will just it'll go to their turn, they'll play their dude, and they'll pass back. Like there's some exceptions obviously, but my experience with playing cancel is like if I pass on turn 3, I mean, are they just not going to play their 3-drop? They're normally just going to like jam whatever creature they have into play, and I like get to cancel it. And like so, it gets to trade pretty well early, and then it like is good late game. Like it's good insulation against their bombs, and so I've been impressed with cancel. I think Essence Scatter is definitely better, like way better. But I've been surprised how often I've put cancel in my deck and just been plenty happy with it.
Yeah, cancel's been pretty nice. Like, it's a clean answer for anything. You can pair it up with like your exclusion mages or even the one bounce spell we have.
Disperse. Yeah.
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 I love
like,
me some disperse.
I don't think cancel's insane or anything. Like I think Essence Scatter is very good and cancel is like fine to not great, but I think cancel is normally so bad, and in the set it's pretty reasonable.
It's lined up nicely with the threats and answers that we have in this format.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think the part of the value in cancel comes from, people are expecting you to be playing Essence Scatter now, so like, they run out that initial guide to get you to Essence Scatter. You Essence Scatter on 2, they lead with, then they come back with what they actually wanted to play, and if you have, just cancel it back, then, it seems pretty awesome. Okay, cool. What blue cards have disappointed us? Nick, what's been disappointing you?
I guess I have to go with Frilled Sea Serpent. I wasn't like huge on the card, but I thought that card would be fine. But it just turned out to be pretty stone unplayable. Just doesn't do really anything. I wasn't too high on the...
I've died to my fair share of Frilled Sea Serpents, but yeah, it's not.
It's way too expensive. I thought it'd be okay. I thought it'd be a good like kind of control finishing sort of spell. But I just don't like it. I've had it played against me a couple times, and it's just a little embarrassing. Especially when the format is the format's about flyers, a little bit, and this thing's just so embarrassing when you tap out on turn 6 and you're facing down like 1 or 2 flyers.
Yeah, it's definitely not great. Like it's lower stats for how much mana that you're paying by quite a lot. Yeah, I can see it just not being great. Like normally you'll just go to your other color to play your late game stuff, or play your rares as your late game cards. Yeah.
So what about you, Danny? Is there a blue card that's broke your heart?
One random, like, Salvager of Secrets, I hadn't played with that type of card, I don't think, and so I was really excited for it, and it proved just going to be pretty expensive. Like, it's really hard to get it to work super well.
I was also thinking of Salvager.
Yeah, it's not great. Like, I was watching some GP coverage, and one of the people in the top 8 had a couple shocks, a couple electrifies, and I think they said they had like 7 or 8 spells, and they still didn't even play the 2 Salvager of Secrets that they had. Like, and that seems like the dream scenario for it, and then the person still decided that they didn't think Salvager of Secrets was good enough to play. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but
it might just be it's probably just the combination of the stats and how expensive it is.
Yeah,
it might just be a little too expensive.
It's really pricey. For all of the decks being kind of slow, they're not slow in a way like you can just not do anything slow. It's like
you have to interact.
Yeah, you have to play stuff onto the board.
It's like board stall slow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like you need to be doing things or it'll snowball out of control and you won't really have any catch-up cards. And so Salvager of Secrets isn't really that great because it like gets you so far behind on the board when you're trying to like set it up.
Yeah.
If I were going to say the blue card that's disappointed me the most is probably Island. I just wanted blue to be really good. I just enjoy playing blue, and I feel like blue has vastly underperformed what I thought it was going to from when we initially looked at the cards and we were initially looking at the commons and uncommons and the spoiler. I've had a really difficult time being successful with blue. So, yeah, I just think the color in general has kind of disappointed me.
I think blue's fine. You just need the right things to line up. You need like a Departed Deckhand or a Horizon Scholar.
I need like a couple of silver pros on a podcast to teach me how to draft.
No,
Uh,
I agree that blue isn't the strongest in this set. It's just the power's more in the uncommons than the commons.
sure.
That's where
So,
Yeah, I've liked.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I've liked some of the blue cards, but I definitely there's some duds for sure.
Let's go ahead and talk about black. Black's kind of been all over the place. It's been featured in a lot of the decks we're seeing, on camera. It's been featured in a lot of the decks we're seeing doing well in the GPs. What card, outside of the obvious things like, Lich's Crest, what kind of card has impressed you that you didn't think would impress you? We'll start with Danny.
Um, I think Epicure of Blood has like filled a pretty good role. Like it's not huge, right? Like a 5-mana 4/4 is not really where you want to be. But the trigger has like come up relatively often, and I think like it is just the right amount of an enabler to make the black-white deck function. Like Vampire Neonate plus Epicure of Blood is like a go-to win condition for those black-white decks, and they're at common and they're not like the highest picks, and so if you're in that deck, you can reliably get them relatively late. And so I've just been really impressed with that as a game plan. I
Okay.
didn't think it would work.
All right, Nick, what about you? What black card has impressed you that maybe you weren't so big on at the beginning of the format, or maybe you were and it's just, gone well above its, performed above its pay grade?
one card that kind of flew under the radar for me was Abnormal Endurance. It's probably the best combat trick, or one of the best combat tricks in the set.
I think it's
It-
the best one.
Me too.
It does the most, yeah.
Like, when you're getting into these huge board stalls, and then your opponent's like, oh yes, I just ripped the removal to like break the board stall. You're like, Abnormal Endurance back, my guy. Like it, or you can do it like aggressively, like, oh, I'm gonna offer up my Vine Mare to trade, and they're like, sweet, take the trade. I'm like, just kidding. Abnormal Endurance, getcha.
Yeah, and those are like the fair instances of abnormal endurance. There's like the
Yeah.
unfair ones where you block their 4/4 with your Gravedigger, and or like you attack your Psychotic Symbiote into their Spark Tongue Dragon, and then you abnormal endurance it. Like there's some broken interactions where it's like, oh yeah, abnormal endurance just won me the game. It was like 2 mana 3 for 1. Like
Yeah, with all the good ETBs in the format, like Horizon Scholar and what you mentioned, it turns from like, all right, like it's good in the fine situations, and it's really good in like these really good.
the
situations.
corner cases, yeah.
It's interesting. After we had a little bit of this kind of a discussion about abnormal endurance last week, and it's something that like I hadn't really been playing with much. But last night was the first time that like I had a really chance to sit down and play with it, and I had it in my draft deck, and the things that I got to do impressed me so much. Like when you guys talk about like against a red white opponent, we had board stalled. They like ripped their one removal to kill my Vampire Sovereign, and like not only do I get my Vampire Sovereign back, but I get to like shoot them for 3 and gain 3 again. I was I was like, this feels so good.
I've bought back a couple Vampire Sovereigns in my time. It feels real nice.
That was awesome. So
Yeah,
Danny,
there's like good black cards too. Like it's on color. A lot of the ETBs that you're looking for are in black. So like abnormal endurance works even better than if it were another color. Like it works.
so
So
we know that that's Nick's most improved. What's your most improved in black, Danny?
So Vampire Sovereign is just like, what a dumb card. I mean, it looked really good initially, but it has been like pretty brutal. So Horizon Scholar is bigger than it, but besides that, it's just gonna like rule the air. Like there's lots of 3 power flyers, and then the trigger is like really gross. And so I've had so many black decks where I could cast the same Vampire Sovereign a bunch of times, and when you do that, it's just like a 6-point life swing is so much, especially if you get multiple of them in the same game. It's just
Like
really hard to beat.
It's Siege Flyno, right?
Yeah. The Flying Rhino is just solid.
Oh yeah.
It's really good.
So what black card has disappointed you, Nick? What was the black card you wanted to love that you couldn't?
In the same lieu of where the white 2/1 wasn't good, I'll go ahead and say Child of Night's not very good either. It's fine for enabling the life gain strategies, but in there it's only like a one-off. Like you get your life, Child of Night then dies, and woohoo, you get your bat. Congratulations.
Yeah, I would have never guessed that Vampire Neonate was like just so much better than Child of Night.
Yeah.
Like, unbelievably better. But
I was like decently high on Neonate at the beginning of the format, and I wasn't even sure like it would be like as good as it is.
So,
but yeah, the same problems I had with Drill Master are the same problems I have with Child of Night.
and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they are effectively, that cycle of 2 1-for-1 with another ability in each of the colors that most of them have. Danny, what is the card in black that's disappointed you the most?
I wasn't a big fan of Strangling Spores. I think I talked about it several times, but that card just felt bad.
I mean,
it's like a combat
You
trick,
can keep
but
beating
a
it
bad one.
like a dead horse. It's fine.
No, it's so bad. It's just terrible. Just horrible.
I've seen like way less Strangling Spores than I feel like I should be seeing.
For the amount of
Honestly.
limited you've
Yeah,
played.
I-
All right, so we've talked a little bit about the black cards that have disappointed us. We've talked about your Strangling Spores. We've talked about your Child of Nights. Now let's talk about red. What card has really blown you away in red, Nick?
Just like we said, Inspired Charge was good in white. What is it called? Trumpet Blast
Trumpet Blast.
is really good in red. Like, this is the strategy where you want to go wide in red-white, and even in red you want to go wide. You want your Goblin Instigators to really get the job done. And when you're playing these dorks like your Goblin Instigator, your Goblin Motivator, Trumpet Blast is really what you're looking for to push through just a huge amount of damage.
I was surprised how many players at the last GP that were on coverage were just basically forcing red-white. Like, I think it's the best deck in the format. And like Trumpet Blast, Inspired Charge, plus the like random 2 bodies for 1 card, you just kind of go a really long way. Like, it's a very reliable game plan, especially if you're in a competitive draft. Like, you're going to be able to get a presentable deck in almost all drafts, which is really nice.
I think it might be the second best color combination in the format. I think that the best is reserved for green-black. I really like green. I really love pairing it with black. But yeah, these Goblin Motivators, and like you see people playing these Goblin Motivators, and the Goblin Instigator is like a fine card, but it's just so good when you pair it with Inspired Charge, Trumpet Blast, and the other one, Make a Stand.
I mean, honestly, if I were to pick a red card that's really impressed me, it's Goblin Motivator. It's just like I'm really, really happy with that guy. I mean, obviously, there's times you're gonna draw him on turn 10 and he's awful, but I mean, like the times you just slam him on 1 more than make up for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Motivator. There's been a version of it in Amonkhet, and I didn't like that card then, but it like somehow does enough in this format. I think it's partly because we were kind of talking about it earlier, where most games you just kind of play the dude that you have in your hand, and so Motivator plays really nicely when that's everyone's game plan, where like on turn 4 you're mostly just going to play a 4-drop, and then this can just like giving it haste then feels a lot more powerful, whereas if you're playing more non-creature spells, then obviously this isn't as good. But yeah, the Motivator's been sweet.
I was actually a little wary of the Motivator because I liked the Goblin Motivator in Amonkhet.
Okay.
And so I had my eye on this guy, and it turns out he pairs pretty nicely with your Boggart Roots and stuff like that.
And he's really good in red-white as well. Like, giving a Pegasus Courser or a Starcrown Stag Haste is like very strong.
That's game.
Like,
yeah.
those are like both really, really powerful effects.
What
And
is there a different card that would get your most improved, Danny, or is one of the 2 that we brought up already kind of what you're thinking?
So for most improved, it's probably those. I mean, I think the Boggart Brute has been insane. Like 3 mana, 3/2 menace has just overperformed. It's been sweet.
He's been awesome.
But yeah, he's like, I think he's first pickable. Like, there's definitely packs where like I'm like, oh yeah, like this is probably just the best common in this pack, and that seems pretty odd.
The Menace is so good too. It lets you bluff these combat tricks so easily. You get to bluff Sure Strikes and whatever so easily and get the easy 2-for-1s.
Yeah, and then like Inspired Charge math gets so complicated, or Trumpet Blast math gets really complicated when you have like Boggart Brute and 2/1/1. Okay, how am I supposed to block here? Like, what actually makes sense?
Yeah.
So those cards have overperformed. Danny, what's underperformed for you in red?
So I'm trying to think of what it was like. Yeah. Oh, Spark Tongue Dragon. Kind of like I was probably just way too high on it, and it might be more that it's really good in sealed, but in draft it's just kind of like it plays like a 5-mana 3/3 flyer such a large percentage of the time, and I think you are almost punished when you're on 6 or 7 mana and you're like, oh, I'm gonna wait. I'm just gonna like I need
Do
to
nothing
not
until I get to
play
8.
this. Yeah, well, like treating it like an 8-drop, I think can really backfire really bad. And then as a 5-mana 3/3 flyer, it's just so much worse than some of the other cards in the set.
And what do you think, Nick? What's disappointed you?
I'll go with Gutter Snipe. I thought there might be like a blue-red kind of spells deck in the format. Turns out there's not. And Gutter Snipe is fine in the red-white go wide decks because you're playing, the Trumpet Blast and Inspired Charges, and you get the little damage off that. But it's not good where I thought it would be good, and so it's disappointed me a little bit in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting tidbit. I think they specifically decided not to reprint Dragon Fodder so that blue-red spells wouldn't get it. And then, blue-red spells was not very good. But
No.
I mean,
I don't know, and they teased you with Enigma Drake and everything.
Yeah.
They're like, it's here, and you're like, where?
Yeah, it's so sad, and I love playing me some blue-red spells, and not getting to do that in this format was kind of let down.
All right.
Yeah, it's definitely one of like the most powerful archetypes sometimes. Like I remember when Thermo Alchemist was around, that it was so good. That was
That's
crazy.
so nutty. Yeah.
So we already know that you're incredibly high on green, Nick. So I'm going to let you lead the green discussion here and tell us what card is blowing you away. What is the card that is the reason you want to be green?
I don't want to give the reason I want to be green because green is so good already. The reasons you want to be green is like Druid of the Cowl, these huge creatures.
Who's your all-star? Who would you vote to the all-star team?
If I need to give like the biggest all-star of all time,
Yeah.
it's Dryad Greenseeker.
Okay.
Yeah, that card is so stupid.
It's a 1/3. It doesn't die to anything cheap. It draws you so many cards. I was in this situation like in the late game where we had like a pretty decent board stall. I was a little bit ahead, and they used their Lich's Caress. I had like 2 huge creatures. They used their Lich's Caress on my Dryad Greenseeker.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they have
felt so
to.
silly. Yeah.
It's just gonna draw 5 cards, right? Like if they don't kill it, that you are gonna draw 5 more cards than them. And that's like not okay.
And then they're
You
gonna
can't
lose.
let that happen. Yeah. So
Hard
I
to
saw
not.
I saw a funny tweet where they're like, Dryad Greenseeker in M19 is like Library of Alexandria, except sometimes when you draw Library of Alexandria late game, it's a bad draw.
Nice.
It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, kind of.
Danny, if Dry Greenseeker is our number 1 all-star starter, who's right behind it on the bench?
So my overperformer is definitely Bristling Boar. That card like looked, oh, this is basically Havoc Devils, but Havoc Devils kind of was bad to fine, and Bristling Boar was like actively pretty good, right? Like that line of text was surprisingly relevant. Just the way that it lined up against other creatures, it meant that there was lots of board states where your Bristling Boar would just like get in for 8 damage, and then you would play a Dreadmaw, and then they're in like a really rough spot. So.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely. What green card has disappointed you, Danny?
Disappointed me. Let me think. So, like all the 2-drops are really bad, but I kind of figured that maybe like Centaur Courser. I think it's still okay, but most of my green decks I just was like flooded on 3-drops because I was trying to ramp on 3. So
You're finding a hard reason to pick a bad card for green. Like that's such a good sign that green is like so good in this format.
Right,
Yeah.
when Centaur Courser is your bad card.
yeah, or one that just like underperformed. Like
Sure.
I still think Centaur Courser is pretty good, but
It's just
I
been-
just like didn't play it that much.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you could talk about Greenwood Sentinel. Like it's a 2/2 with Vigilance, sure, whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's some bad cards for sure. Like the 2-drops aren't great. Highland Game and
But I mean, to
Greenwood Temple
underperform, would have had to expect it to perform.
Yeah.
exactly.
What about you,
Exactly,
Nick?
yeah.
What green card has underperformed for you?
I have no clue, honestly. All of these green cards are so good. I'll say I'll say Highland Game. It's fine.
It's fun.
It's a sideboard card for me, honestly. You bring it in when you need to gain those 2 life, but sometimes they can go around it in the matchups where you need to chump block and gain the 2 life, or trade off and gain the 2 life.
Mm-hmm.
Like against red white, I think it's really good. Against
Yeah.
blue white, where you also need to gain the 2 life because they have these creatures that are coming at you on turns 2, 3, and 4. I think it's kind of bad.
So one of the things that we didn't discuss, like when we did our initial reviews of the set, we talked about the commons and uncommons, and we went down the 5 colors. We didn't really talk about, the multicolor and artifact cards. So what I'd like to do right now is just talk about which gold or artifact cards have impressed you and which ones have kind of let you down as well. I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Danny. What gold or artifact card has really kind of blown you away?
So, I think for artifacts, the Transmogrifying Wand was so good. At least in sealed. I don't know.
Turning things into
it's still
oxen?
good in draft, but it's sweet. It's really interesting to play with. And I actually just think the power level is super high. I saw one of the people that 9-0'd the little GP. I think they had 2 Transmogrifying Wands in their deck. And played a lot of O3s and flyers, and then they would reliably just Transmogrifying Wand everything. And then, yeah, that card overperformed for sure.
What about you, Nick? What gold or artifact card has really blown you away?
We could talk about the obvious ones like heroic reinforcements and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think,
I think it overperformed though. I wasn't positive that card would be as insane as it is.
yeah, you're right.
Right.
But I want to give my spot here to Arcane Encyclopedia. I think that card is it kind of looked like an Urza's Tome, but even more expensive, and it was ooh, I don't know if I really want that. The format's just so slow, and you need these card advantage engines sometimes, unless you're against red white. That where Arcane Encyclopedia is really sweet, and I'd see them going around the table. I'm nobody wants this. I'd pick it up for myself. I just slam it in my deck. I'd draw so many cards, it would pull me so far ahead. It's just so good.
That's awesome. Is there a gold or artifact card, Nick, that you thought, this card's great that really just wasn't for you?
Let's give it up for my boy Enigma Drake.
Wah, wah, wah.
There's no blue-red spells deck. If you're playing Enigma Drake, it's probably mostly just a block.
Hey, it's a 2/4.
Yeah, sure. It could be a 2/4, or
Maybe.
it could be a 1/4. And it's just so sad that blue-red spells isn't here, and I'll go cry in the corner.
Yeah, that card was not great. Yep.
Go ahead.
Past its prime.
Go ahead, Danny. What either gold or artifact card has let you down?
So I think the gold cards were mostly pretty. Brawl Bash Ogres, that deck didn't come together very often.
I think the card is good though.
Yeah, that card's fine. Satyr Enchanter, kind of similar, where you didn't really. Well, no, it was okay. Maybe Aerial Engineer. That's actually probably the pick. The artifact deck was just so hard to get to go, just because there's not very many artifacts. You had to take Skyscanner so high if you wanted to play blue-white artifacts.
Yeah, and everybody's already picking up Skyscanners anyways. I'd be in green, I'd have an Oaken form. I'd be sure, I'll pick up a Skyscanner. I can slap some auras on it.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, right. So, the card that has been the most up and down for me is probably Marauder's Axe. When it's been good for me, it's been incredibly good, but when it's been bad, it's been really bad.
Yeah, it's a bit polarizing. It really depends on what kind of deck you have. You need the right kind of deck. It's not going to go so well, I don't think, in green, where your creatures are already so big that it doesn't even matter. I
Yeah,
think
you don't need it at all there.
Yeah, it really just shines in like red white and white blue. Honestly.
Hmm. Yeah, on flyers, on tokens. In sealed, I liked it. I think in sealed I would mostly play it. Probably not in my, like, if I just have a bunch of bombs and green cards, but I found myself playing a lot of kind of do nothing creatures in sealed just to make it work. But
Yeah. But I think you're right. Like on tokens, like where you can find your tokens, like the Goblin Instigators, or on your flyers, like Snapping Drake. I think that's where it really shines.
ooh, one random card that kind of underperformed, it was Chromium. That card was like, it looks unbeatable, but it's not actually as good as it looks. Like, there's like some weird lines where it kind of gets wrecked, but like,
Well, like, so it costs 7 mana, so it's probably going to be the last card in your hand when you want to cast it, right? And so, yeah, I could see it becomes like hard to actually activate the ability. You have to wait a turn to even play it if you want to activate the ability, just in case.
well, mostly like what happened is I kept on wanting to get my value, so I wanted to flash it in and ambush a creature and block that creature.
Yeah,
so, like,
exactly.
Like, I mean, I want my value. Like, I want my free kill. And so I would always do that, and then I'd block, and then second main phase, they'd be like, okay, electrify Chromium. I'm like, wait. Hold on.
Aw.
Oh, this works, actually. Yeah, I guess that just resolves. I'm sad.
Yeah, that's got to be super sad.
Yeah, it's a... Then I had to start playing it as just like a flyer that cost 7, which was annoying. But...
It's definitely no Derek has.
Boo-hoo, I have my flash flying 7/7.
I just think it underperformed, guys. I wanted it to be
Look,
even better.
he wanted it to have more abilities.
Correct.
wanted
I wanted
his-
it to
his
not
peanut
die
butter.
to state-based effects when I transformed it into a 1/1.
Sure. So,
Not that particular.
We just finished up Minneapolis. Minneapolis was the last, time that Core 19 is going to be on the premiere event stage. And
That's sad.
it's kind of weird that it feels like a short format, with it being a summer set, and we're kind of already doing the look back. In looking back, how do you feel Wizards of the Coast did on making this a fun and interesting format to play? Given that it's a core set, were you happy with it? Were you sad? Like, what would you give it out of 10? Go ahead, Nick.
I'll give it like a 6, maybe like 6.5 out of 10. It was pretty fun. You can sometimes do some crazy shenanigans. I had a couple Elvish Rejuvenator decks that were like 4, almost 5 color. And when I was doing that, I was having some fun. But there's also like the solid 2-color archetypes. And those are pretty fun too. It's not a bad format. It's not the most exciting. A lot of things are just like, oh, how well does my 3/3 line up against whatever creatures you have? And in that regard, it was okay.
Yeah,
So
I did more stats-based sideboarding than I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I guess I'd give it a 6.
So, last question before I ask Danny the same questions. If you could add one common or uncommon from Dominaria to Core 19, what would it be?
Is this even a question?
Ooh. Hold on, let me think.
Tatiova.
No, boo.
It's not
boo.
Tatiova.
Oh, hold on, wait. Yes, I actually agree.
You think it makes
because
the
if
format
you open
better?
Scape Shift,
Oh my god.
and then you tutor your Reliquary Tower, and then you've done it.
I'd like to say that I had a chance to value draft Escape Shift in day 2,
Uh-huh.
and I was like so close to doing it, but I was like, yeah.
Would you
screw
take
it, I'll-
over it like a Titanic Growth or something?
No, I think it was like an explosive apparatus.
Oh, that's like
you could
wow,
you could
that
literally
is
own
discipline.
Escape Shift right now.
Yeah. It
That
was
is
a
so
super
much
disciplined pick.
Yeah.
And the apparatus was like the 23rd card in my deck.
I mean, but you could have played a land. You could have just
Yeah.
played lands.
I was like trying to justify it. I was like, should I like what happens if I sacrifice all my lands and I get more lands? Like what's gonna
I mean, I think deck thinning is probably better than an explosive apparatus, right?
I think so. Somebody agree with me. Danny, what did you think of the format? I know you got to play one of the 2 limited GPs around this format, and I know you've been playing some of Magic Online. How do you think
Yeah.
Wizards did? What do you rate it out of 10?
I think it's like perfectly respectable. It does kind of like Dominaria was so sweet that this one is not as sweet, and I am a big fan of sweetness. So I'd probably rate it like I think it's like a 6 though. I think it's like relatively balanced. Like it took a little bit for people to figure stuff out. Like cards moved around in pick orders. Like it wasn't like super obvious how everything was gonna shake up. So I think it was a pretty good set. The gameplay wasn't like the best or the most interesting, I think, but.
And which non-Tatiova card would you bring in from Dominaria if you could to
Which
improve
one's
the limited
cool?
format?
What's like a really cool one? Probably one of the sagas. I thought the sagas were so sweet, but
Okay.
partly because they like interacted with each other. But you like
Bringing
Maybe
Song
some-
of Freyalise back.
yeah, Song of Freyalise would be sweet.
Give me some Time of Ice.
Yeah, that type of card. Maybe
Yeah.
something.
I just think Blue
Yeah,
needs. I think Blue needs
Mirari
something.
Conjecture. I love Mirari Conjecture. That would
Conjecture is a
probably
lot of fun.
Yeah.
But why would you like? The obvious answer is Tatiova. We already have our pseudo Tatiova in Dryad Greenseeker. Let's get both of the girls in here.
You're like, let's just do it. We're gonna do it
And
live.
then you can even play Lanonor Scout. Maybe I just want Lanonor Scout, Tatiova, and Dryad Greenseeker.
Right,
all on the same
and
team.
then maybe at that point it's okay to value draft escape shift.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
my standard deck right now.
I-
Escape Shift to Tatiova.
I'll tell you what. Week 1 of the format, I was playing Magic Online. I'm drafting. A Crucible got passed to me. The first thing I did was price check.
Oh, of course.
Well, I
Yeah.
just like the real life prices are so different. I was like, oh, it's one ticket. Send it on. Awesome. Well, it seems like that we've enjoyed Core 19. I know there's going to be a few more things to say about Core 19. I know that spoilers have started sneaking out already for Guilds of Ravnica. I've seen at least one card that looked like it was a Spanish pre-release card that's kind of gotten out there. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that shapes up. A lot of players are
Is it-
excited. Go ahead.
Is it agreed that everyone's just going to call this one RTRTR? Is that
Right? They should.
like the agreed upon
Good
name?
one.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid.
I mean, that's what me and my friends were calling it before, like they even announced RTRTR like years ago. We were like,
Yeah,
"When's
yeah,
the
yeah.
return to Rev?"
Yeah. I mean, you can just keep tacking on TRs at the end, and we can do
Yeah.
it forever.
Once we get to the 5th one, that's probably what they'll name it.
So there's been a lot going on for the LTO show. Nick just made silver. He'll be playing at the Pro Tour this weekend, going back to Minneapolis. You probably should have just stayed there.
Well, it's complicated, but maybe.
He's trying to whack up those freaking flyer miles.
Smart.
So Nick's going to Minneapolis this weekend. So everybody wish him good luck. Hopefully we get to see him on camera. Danny will be back on the camera before you know it. Once again, we are brought to you by some wonderful sponsors. We're brought to you by our new sponsors, Inked Gaming. If you ever wanted that custom playmat with something really unique, something that screams you, go to Inked Gaming, use the code CCMTG10 to get 10% off of whatever your heart desires. We're brought to you by the Mana Base, which can be found at www.themanabase.com. And of course, Oasis Games in Salt Lake City can be found at www.oasisgameslc.com. You can directly support us on Patreon at patreon.com/LTOMTG. And if you were listening to the podcast some other way, you can find us on mtgcast.com, constructedcriticism.com. On Twitter, we can be found at LTOMTG. And if you want to subscribe to us on iTunes. We love iTunes reviews. And youtube.com/c/constructedcriticism. Any parting thoughts for the week, Danny?
No, just good luck to Nick at the PT. Take it down with your Brazilian teammates. Hopefully, you guys can.
I just have
break all 3 formats.
I just have one last
Okay.
question before we go this week, Nick. How's your Portuguese?
Can't speak a lick of it.
Você fala português? Something like that. Like, do you speak Portuguese? I think.
There you go.
I think they speak English though, so we'll be able to communicate.
So they're not American.
Yeah.